This section is a continuation of chapter 25.4, the definite integral. And I've been working out problems for you from the textbook. I want to jump around a little bit because I want you to see one that's a little bit tougher and takes a while to do. So let me first set up my timer to make sure I don't go over the time that I need to be able to do the video. Okay, so problem number 17 on page 757. Let's look at that. Problem 17 says evaluate the definite integrals. And it gives the problem to find the area between -2 and -1 of 12 under the curve of 12x times 4 minus x squared to the third power dx. This is a tough problem because you have to work, you have to use the u. And the u, you use the substitution u whenever you have a big mess or a long problem that is raised to a power. So you kind of do a little side problem. And your book explains this differently than I do it, and the videos are different than I do it. You choose whatever works for you. This seems to be the way that I best understand it. So we let u equal 4 minus x squared, whatever is in the parentheses. Then if I were, we're doing a side problem over here now. If I were to take the derivative of this, du would be equal to the derivative of, not the antiderivative, the derivative. The derivative of 4 is 0. The derivative of negative x squared is negative 2x dx. And then what I want you to do is to solve for dx. So we're going to divide this side by -2x and divide this side by -2x. These would cross out, and I would be left with, I'm going to put the dx on this side. Dx equals du over -2x. We're going to use that information when we come back to our problem here. So now what I want to do is rewrite this problem. So I have from -2 to -1, I have 12x, but in place of 4 minus x squared, I'm going to put u. So I have 12x times u to the third power times dx. And what is dx equal to? Dx is equal to du over -2x. So this is like one big multiplication problem. So let's cross out, simplify what we can. The 12x and the -2x divide, the x's cross out, and we're left with -6u to the third du. Now this is a whole lot easier to work with than what we have up here. So we're going to take this and let's integrate it. Let's find the antiderivative. So we have -6u to the, add 1 to the power, and then divide by the power. And we're going to evaluate that at -2 and -1. Well, before we evaluate it, we want to go back and substitute for our u back what it originally stood for. So what we have actually is -6 times 4 minus x squared to the 4th over 4 from -1 to -2. And if I reduce the -6/4, I get -3 times 4 minus x squared to the 4th over 2 evaluated from -1 to -2. Always start with the higher value to substitute. So we're going to put a -1 in for this x. So we have over here -3 times 4 minus, this would be -1 squared to the 4th power all over 2. Minus, let's substitute in a -2 now, -3 times 4 minus -2 squared to the fourth power all over 2. Which gives us, when we work this out here, these, and you got to take this a little, take it apart one step at a time. You want to figure out what this is. Inside the parentheses, -1 squared would be -1 to the second order, which is +1. So we would have 4 minus a +1, which is 3. So now we have -3 times 3 to the 4th over 2 minus, let's start with this. What's -2 squared? It'd be 4. 4 minus 4 is 0. So 3, all of this is gone. Thank goodness. So we have -0. So this equals now 3 to the 4th power, which is 3 times 3 times 3 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9 times 3 is 27 times 3 is 81. So we have -3 times 81 over 2, and that equals -243 over 2. That is your answer. So the process here, when you have these large, like, it kind of reminds you of the power and the chain rule that we had to do when we were doing derivatives, when you see that. And you've got the product rule there, you've got the chain rule there. It's best to try to use your U. It takes some getting used to, but the more you do, the better you get at it. Okay, so now let's go to an easier one. You can review that number 17 a couple of times. I left off, I believe, with number 11, so I'm going to try very quickly number 13. 13 says evaluate from 1 to 8 the function cube root of x minus 2 dx. So the first thing we're going to do is rewrite this cube root. Remember that the cube root of x to the first is equal to x to the 1/3. This is your power. This is your index. So let's rewrite this as x to the 1/3 minus 2 dx. So half the skill is getting it rewritten the correct way. Now let's integrate each one of these. So let's start with the x. So we have x to the 1/3, and we have to add 1. And 1 will be in the form of 3/3 to match this bottom number, which equals 1/3 plus 3/3 equals 4/3. So we also have to divide by the 4/3. Minus the 2 would have to be 2x, because when you take the derivative of 2x, you get -2. All of this should be evaluated from 1 to 8. So let's simplify this. We have 4/3 times, let's do times 3/4, the reciprocal. Then we get 1 in the bottom. But if we do that on the bottom, we have to do that on the top. So we have 3/4. So now we have 3x to the 4/3 over 4 minus 2x, all evaluated between 1 and 8. Okay, let's start with the high value, 8. We have 3/4 times 8 to the 4/3 minus 2 times 8 minus, now substitute the 1 in. We would have 3/4 times 1 to the 4/3, and we're substituting back up into these values wherever there's an x. Let's see here. Minus 2 times 1. So from there, we're going to go way up here, and we get 3/4 times 8 to the 4/3. Keep this in mind, 8 to the 4/3. If you did the review on radicals, I'm sorry you don't have that review, but you learned this in algebra, hopefully, that 8 to the 4/3 is equal to the cube root of 8 to the 4th power. The cube root of 8 is 2. 2 to the 4th is equal to 2 times 2 is 4 times 2 is 8 times 2 is 16. So we have 16 minus 16. And let me double check that and make sure I did that right. We have 3/4 force. Oh, sorry, let me erase that. Let me erase that. What we actually have here is 3/4. 3/4. I'm substituting back into this value here. And we said that the cube root of, or 8 to the 4/3 is equal to 16. So we have 3/4 times 16 minus 16. And then from there, we have minus 3/4 times 1 to the 4/3 would just be 3/4 minus 2. Now we're just dealing with fractions. So let's clear up some of this stuff and do our fractions. 3/4 times 16. The 4 and the 16 will cancel. This would become a 1. This would become a 4. So we would be left with 3 times 4, which is 12, minus 16 in the first parentheses, minus, and then we have 3/4 minus 2. And you can wait to do that, or you can go ahead and do that. It doesn't really matter how you do these problems. There's so many different ways. So we have -4 minus 3/4 minus 2. And I'm going to distribute this negative here to both of these. So I would have -4 minus 3/4 plus 2. -4 plus 2 gives me -2 minus 3/4. And our -2 would be written as -8/4 to match this bottom number, minus 3/4 is equal to -11/4. And that is your answer for number 13. And I will continue to do some more problems for you in the next video.